to the Bendino Podcast, where we're calling a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. A slap in the face, you say. Our offers aren't good enough, you claim. We didn't come to the table with anything of substance, you said. The WNBA owners are playing chess while the players are...
Beyond salaries, the proposal includes structural changes that would dramatically improve players' daily lives. Charter flights for all preseason, regular season, and postseason games would become standard. That alone addresses years of criticism about player health, recovery, and travel fatigue. Additionally, each team would receive 2 new developmental roster spots, creating 24 new jobs across the league. That's meaningful expansion without adding teams, an approach that strengthens depth while controlling costs. The benefits don't stop there. Increased 401k contributions, enhanced family planning support, and expanded childcare accommodations are all included. Players would be allowed to bring young children and caregivers on road trips, with additional hotel rooms provided. Arenas would be required to include family rooms during games. These aren't symbolic gestures. They're quality-of-life improvements that players have requested for years. And crucially, many of these benefits are guaranteed regardless of revenue performance. That's a major concession from ownership. The proposal recognizes that compensation isn't just about salary. It's about sustainability for players as people, not just performers. That perspective alone marks a shift in how the league views its workforce.
Goals for a win-win CBA. 1. Substantially increase player salaries to reflect recent and future business growth. Recent. I like the sound of that. I like the sound. Recent. They're alluding to something. These owners aren't fools. They're alluding to something.
What people are reacting to right now isn't anger so much as shock. Because when you strip away the noise on social media and actually read what the WNBA has put forward in its latest collective bargaining proposal, it becomes obvious that this isn't a minor adjustment or a symbolic gesture. It's a complete reset of how the league operates financially. And that's exactly why the reaction feels so unbalanced. The expectations have raced far ahead of the numbers. The league didn't float vague promises or future hopes this time. It leaked the full proposal in detail, laying out exactly what it is willing to commit to. Supermax salaries that currently sit around $250,000 are projected to climb as high as $2.4 million by 2031 under the high-revenue model. Average player salaries, which hover near $120,000 today, could exceed $1 million. That isn't gradual progress. That's structural transformation. What this proposal quietly exposes is how broken the previous system actually was. For years, the league operated under a CBA that severely capped player earnings while absorbing losses season after season. Now, ownership is offering to more than double the player's share of revenue, from roughly 9 to about 15. That's a massive jump by any professional sports standard. But it still falls well short of the 30 players are demanding, and that gap explains the tension. Here's the reality most online debates skip over: the WNBA has lost money for nearly 3 decades. Last season alone reportedly ran at a $40 million deficit. This negotiation isn't happening in a profit-rich environment like the NBA or NFL. It's happening in a league still trying to stabilize its financial foundation. You cannot distribute revenue that doesn't exist. That isn't greed or disrespect, it's math. Beyond salaries, the proposal includes changes players have been asking for years. Charter flights for all games would become standard, a huge upgrade for player health and recovery. Teams would gain 2 additional developmental roster spots, creating more jobs and more pathways into the league. Retirement contributions would increase. Family planning benefits would expand. Players would be allowed to bring children and caregivers on road trips, with extra hotel rooms guaranteed. Arenas would be required to provide family rooms during games. These aren't cosmetic perks. They're quality-of-life improvements, and many of them are guaranteed regardless of whether revenue targets are hit. That matters. It shows the league isn't just dangling upside, it's committing to baseline support. Then came the moment that sparked ridicule: free WNBA League Pass and complimentary All-Star tickets for players. Fans laughed, not realizing that the joke wasn't about the league, it was about how little leverage players had in past negotiations. If those benefits weren't secured before, it explains why ownership still controls the pace now. Leverage doesn't come from visibility alone. It comes from sustained revenue, ratings, sponsorships, and profit. The uncomfortable truth is this: the league is offering the most aggressive compensation overhaul in its history while still operating at a loss. The players are negotiating based on where they believe the league should be. Ownership is negotiating based on where the league actually is. That gap, not bad faith, is what's driving the conflict. This proposal isn't perfect. It's not final. But it's not insulting either. It's ambitious, risky, and rooted in financial reality. And until that reality changes, every negotiation will be constrained by the same equation, no matter how loud the conversation gets.
All right, let's take a look at some numbers. WNBA CBA revenue sharing proposal, projected player salaries. Total salary, base salary, indeed. 2025 is last past season. Prior CBA actual for the Supermax, $250,000. Oof. 2020.
What you're hearing right now isn't irritation. It isn't annoyance. It's disbelief. The kind of disbelief that sets in when expectations collide head-on with reality. Because the reaction to the WNBA's latest collective bargaining agreement proposal tells us far more about perception than it does about facts. On social media, the dominant narrative is outraged players and supporters framing the league's offer as insufficient, dismissive, even insulting. But when you slow things down and actually examine what has been proposed, the picture looks radically different. This isn't a minor tweak or a symbolic gesture meant to quiet criticism. What the league has put forward represents a fundamental shift in how the WNBA operates financially and structurally. It's not a band-aid. It's an attempted rebuild of the league's economic foundation. And yet, somehow, the loudest response has been that it still isn't enough. That disconnect is where the confusion begins. Because if this proposal had been introduced even 5 years ago, it would have been hailed as revolutionary. Instead, it's being framed as inadequate before most people have even read what's included. That tells you something important: the debate has moved faster than the facts. Emotion is driving the conversation, not arithmetic. What's happening here is a clash between aspiration and infrastructure. The players want compensation that reflects where they believe the league should be. The league, meanwhile, is negotiating based on where it actually is. And those two realities are not the same thing. Online discourse tends to flatten complexity. Salary numbers are shared without context. Percentages are quoted without explanation. Losses are ignored entirely. And the result is a conversation where frustration thrives, but understanding doesn't. This proposal isn't about disrespect. It's about sustainability. It's about attempting to create a system that doesn't just promise growth, but can survive it. That's a critical distinction that's being lost in the noise. If you only listen to the reaction, you'd think the league offered crumbs. But once you examine the structure, the timelines, and the financial commitments being made, it becomes clear that this is the most aggressive attempt at reform the WNBA has ever put on the table. The problem isn't that the offer lacks ambition. The problem is that ambition has outpaced economic reality, and nobody wants to acknowledge that out loud. So before we accept the narrative that this proposal is insulting or inadequate, we need to step back and look at what's actually being offered. Because the numbers tell a story that's far more complicated and far more generous than the outrage suggests.
Average player salary, 2025. Prior CBA deal, $120,000. 2026 projected, $540K with a 465 base. Fair, very fair, very fair. Nearly $500,000 depending on what side you are on. By 2031, projected to $700.
And then there's the detail that sparked ridicule online: free WNBA League Pass for players and complimentary All-Star Game tickets. On the surface, the reaction seems justified. Many fans couldn't believe these weren't already included. But that shock reveals something deeper and more troubling. If the players' negotiating body couldn't secure free access to their own league's content in the previous CBA, that's not an indictment of ownership. It's a reflection of limited leverage at the time. And that history matters. Because leverage doesn't magically appear. It's built through revenue, ratings, sponsorships, and demand. Right now, the league is still losing money. Demanding 30 of revenue while the business runs at a deficit isn't a power move, it's a gamble. That doesn't mean players are wrong to want more. It means the timeline may be misaligned with reality. The reaction to these smaller benefits overshadowed the far larger concessions on the table. And in doing so, it weakened the credibility of the outrage. When you mock the inclusion of League Pass, you're indirectly admitting how little leverage existed before. The math doesn't lie. And until the league consistently generates profit, negotiations will always be constrained by that fact, no matter how loud social media gets.
The rookie contract sounds fair. Team charter travel, preseason, regular season, and postseason games. Caitlin Clark shed a spotlight on you guys. You guys are traveling in with the rest of us. So you know what? We'll put you on some chartered flights. So some nice jets for you ladies to go here to there. So you're not at a Newark International Airport. Terminal C. Okay. First class travel in and out of team market. Higher annual salary increases in multi-year.
The phrase sustainability language appears repeatedly in the proposal, and that wording has been widely mocked online. But dismissing it misses the point entirely. Sustainability isn't corporate jargon here, it's an admission. The league is acknowledging, openly, that it has operated at a loss for 27 consecutive years. That's not an exaggeration. That's the financial reality. The owners aren't threatening players when they say the league needs to make money. They're stating a mathematical fact. You cannot distribute a percentage of revenue that doesn't exist. And that's the core conflict at the heart of these negotiations. Players are asking for approximately 30% of total league revenue. Ownership is offering closer to 15%, up from roughly 9% in the previous agreement. That increase alone represents a massive shift in revenue sharing. In percentage terms, it's a near doubling of the players' cut. But here's the issue, even 15% is being offered in a league that reportedly lost around $40 million last season. That means ownership is negotiating not from profit, but from deficit. In most professional leagues, revenue sharing is debated on the margins of surplus. In the WNBA, it's being debated in the absence of it. That changes everything. This isn't a moral argument. It's not about fairness or respect. It's about arithmetic. If the league collapses financially, no percentage matters. And that's the line owners are unwilling to cross. The players' demands reflect where they believe the league should be in terms of cultural relevance and growth. The owners' offer reflects where the league actually stands financially. The gap between those positions is the real story, not bad faith, not disrespect.